Imagine letting a billionaire send your 10-year-old child to live on Mars, permanently. No gravity like Earth's, deadly radiation, bones and brains that might never develop properly. And the company didn't even ask for your permission. Your kid just checked a box saying it was okay. You'd say absolutely not. It's insane, dangerous, irresponsible. But according to psychologist Jonathan Haidt, that's exactly what society has done to an entire generation. By handing every child a smartphone and unrestricted social media without safety testing, without guardrails, and without understanding the consequences. In The Anxious Generation, Haidt reveals how this sudden switch from a childhood of free play and real-world adventure to one lived inside glowing screens has triggered a massive surge in anxiety, depression, loneliness, and self-harm among teens, starting around 2010 to 2015. Chapter 1. A tidal wave. Picture this. Parents sitting across from their once bright, curious child, watching someone they barely recognize anymore. The laughter is gone. The easy conversations have dried up. Instead, there's silence broken only by the faint tap-tap of fingers on a screen or sudden bursts of anger when that screen is taken away. "It's like my kid disappeared," one parent after another says. We get glimpses of the real them when the phone's gone for a few days. But the moment it's back in their hand, that light in their eyes just switches off again. This isn't happening to just a few families. It's happening everywhere. Starting around 2010 and accelerating sharply between 2012 and 2015, something broke in the mental health of teenagers and preteens across many countries. After decades when things were stable or even slowly getting better, the numbers flipped into freefall. Depression rates shot up. Anxiety disorders became far more common. Persistent loneliness became the new normal for huge numbers of young people. Emergency rooms started seeing wave after wave of kids who had hurt themselves, cuts, burns, poisonings, sometimes doubling or tripling in just a few years. For girls aged 10 to 14, self-harm visits exploded by 150 to 200% in some places. Suicide rates climbed steeply too, rising over 150% for younger teenage girls, and nearly doubling for boys in the same age range. These aren't small shifts. They're steep, sudden cliffs on the graphs, flat lines for 40 years, then a near vertical rise that begins right as smartphones became ubiquitous and social media turned addictive by design. And it isn't only happening in one country. The same terrifying patterns show up in the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Scandinavia, parts of Western Europe, anywhere high-speed internet and powerful smartphones reached children and teens at scale during those critical years. Girls have been hit especially hard. Depression and self-injury rates are often 2, 3, even 4 times higher for them than for boys. But boys are far from unscathed. They're suffering too, just in ways that sometimes show up differently. What makes this surge so alarming is how fast it happened and how perfectly it lines up with one massive change in childhood. Before the early 2000s, most kids still grew up in a world of face-to-face play, hanging out with friends after school, riding bikes until the streetlights came on, getting into harmless trouble, figuring out who they were through real interactions. Then, almost overnight, childhood moved indoors and onto screens. Smartphones slipped into every pocket. Social media platforms became the main place to exist, to be seen, to be judged. Endless scrolling replaced running around. Notifications replaced conversations. Comparison replaced connection. The timing is uncanny. The moment millions of children hit puberty, the exact window when the brain is rewiring itself for adulthood, when social acceptance feels like life or death. That's when the devices arrived with their fire hose of likes, comments, filters, drama, outrage, and perfectly curated lives. The old world of play and real friendship was quietly replaced by a new one built for maximum engagement, not maximum well-being. This isn't about blaming individual parents or kids. It's about recognizing that something enormous and unplanned happened to an entire generation at the most vulnerable stage of life. The evidence is overwhelming. We're living through the biggest, fastest increase in adolescent mental illness ever recorded. And it started when childhood itself changed, when the real world got swapped out for a glowing rectangle. That's the crisis this book lays bare right at the beginning. A tidal wave of suffering has crashed over young people, and the rest of the story is about understanding exactly how and why it happened, and what we can still do to help pull them back to solid ground. Chapter 2. The Backstory. Think back to a world not so long ago, one where kids spent their afternoons outside inventing games, climbing trees, getting scraped up, negotiating rules with friends, coming home dirty and happy. That world didn't vanish overnight, but it faded quickly. And what replaced it wasn't just screens. It was the near-total loss of something humans have needed for thousands of years, a true play-based childhood. Children aren't born knowing how to be adults. Evolution gave our species an unusually long childhood for a reason, so we could learn everything we need to survive and thrive in a complex social world. Unlike most animals that mature fast and hit the ground running, human kids get years, sometimes more than a decade, of protected time to absorb culture, skills, and social wisdom. That learning doesn't happen through lectures or apps. It happens through free play, the kind where kids make up the rules, take turns leading, argue, make up, fall down, get back up. It's messy, unpredictable, joyful, and essential. Free play builds more than just fun memories. It wires the brain for resilience, creativity, emotional regulation, and cooperation. It teaches kids how to read other people's emotions, handle conflict without an adult referee, take calculated risks, and bounce back from failure. The United Nations even declared play a fundamental right of every child because it's that vital to healthy development. Yet over recent decades, unsupervised outdoor play has been steadily replaced by adult-supervised activities, structured sports, and, most dramatically, endless time indoors on devices. Why did this happen? A cultural shift toward overprotection took hold, starting in the 1980s and accelerating in the 1990s and 2000s. Parents, schools, and society became convinced the real world was full of dangers. Stranger abductions, traffic, lawsuits. So kids were kept close, scheduled, and supervised. Playgrounds got softer, recess got shorter. Independence became suspect. At the same time, the virtual world opened wide with no guardrails at all. Kids could explore anywhere online, anytime, with almost no limits. We overprotected children in reality and underprotected them digitally, the exact opposite of what growing brains need. This imbalance flips a natural brain setting. Humans have two basic modes, discover mode and defend mode. In discover mode, kids feel safe enough to explore, take risks, seek novelty, learn from experience. They climb higher, run faster, test limits, because they've built confidence through small, everyday challenges. Overcoming fear in play makes them stronger, more capable, more eager for life. But when the world feels constantly threatening, or when adults remove every chance to face real risks, kids default to defend mode. They stay on high alert, scanning for danger, avoiding challenges, feeling fragile. Anxiety becomes the default. Curiosity shrinks. The brain stays stuck in survival, not growth. Risky play is the antidote, falling off a log and getting back up, negotiating who's it in tag, roughhousing and learning when to stop. These experiences teach anti-fragility, the idea that some stress makes us stronger, not weaker. Without them, kids miss out on building the psychological muscle they'll need later. They become more anxious, less resilient, less able to handle ordinary setbacks. Then comes puberty, the biggest rewiring of all. Around ages 10 to 15, the brain goes through a massive transformation. Hormones surge. New neural connections form at lightning speed. Experiences during this window shape who someone will become as an adult, literally carving pathways in the brain through repetition and reward. Puberty is a sensitive period. The right experiences build social skills, confidence, independence. The wrong ones, or too few real ones, lock in fragility and disconnection. In traditional societies, puberty marked a clear transition to adulthood through rites of passage, separation from childhood, intense challenges, new responsibilities, and reincorporation into the community as a recognized grown-up. These rituals gave meaning, role models, and a sense of progress. Today, that path is blocked. Overprotection keeps teens from real-world adventures. Phones pull them into endless comparison, drama, and instant gratification instead of growth. The natural drive to separate from parents and prove themselves gets hijacked by screens. Many adolescents stay stuck in a prolonged, undefined childhood, socially immature, emotionally volatile, without clear milestones or a sense of moving forward. The result is a generation that's reached puberty in a world that no longer offers the experiences evolution designed for this exact stage. Without free play in middle childhood to build foundations, without risky challenges to forge resilience, and without a supported transition through puberty, young people struggle to become capable, confident adults. They're left anxious, isolated, and developmentally delayed, not because they're weak, but because the environment changed so radically, so fast. This is the backstory. Childhood used to be rooted in real-world exploration, risk, and connection. That foundation has eroded. What filled the void was something far more addictive and far less nourishing. The stage is now set for understanding exactly how the phone-based childhood took over and the devastating toll it's taken. Chapter 3. The Great Rewiring. Now we arrive at the core of what happened, the moment childhood itself was rewired on a massive scale. Between roughly 2010 and 2015, the world crossed an invisible line. Smartphones went from luxury to necessity. Social media platforms became perfectly engineered to capture attention. High-speed internet reached almost every home. Suddenly, the average child no longer spent most of their waking hours in the real world with real people. Instead, childhood moved inside a glowing rectangle, a phone-based childhood that displaced almost everything that came before. This wasn't a gentle shift. It was a rapid, near-total replacement, and it inflicted 4 deep, interlocking harms that hit developing brains at exactly the worst possible time. The first harm is social deprivation. Human beings are wired for face-to-face interaction. From infancy, we learn to read micro-expressions, body language, tone of voice, cues that can only be picked up in person. Real friendships are built through shared laughter, shared risks, shared secrets whispered on the playground or in the backyard. When those experiences vanish and get replaced by likes, comments, DMs, and filtered selfies, something essential breaks. Teens report feeling lonelier than ever, even when they're connected to hundreds of people online. The brain craves synchronous, embodied interaction. Texting and scrolling deliver only a pale imitation, enough to feel the absence, not enough to fill it. The second harm is sleep deprivation. Phones follow children into bed. Notifications ping at midnight. TikTok or Instagram reels keep eyes open long past bedtime. Blue light from screens suppresses melatonin. The simple act of checking one last message turns into hours of doom scrolling. Studies show that teens who use screens heavily at night get significantly less sleep, sometimes an hour or two less per night. Chronic sleep loss doesn't just make kids tired. It amplifies anxiety, depression, impulsivity, and emotional volatility. A tired teenage brain is a fragile one. The third harm is attention fragmentation. The human attention system evolved to focus deeply on one thing at a time. Hunting, gathering, learning a skill, listening to a story. Modern platforms are built for the opposite. Constant switching, endless novelty, micro-rewards every few seconds. Every swipe, every like, every new video trains the brain to expect instant stimulation and to panic without it. Deep reading, sustained conversation, even quiet reflection become harder. The ability to concentrate for more than a few minutes erodes. Schoolwork suffers, creativity suffers. The sense of a coherent inner life suffers. Minds become scattered, restless, addicted to novelty rather than meaning. The fourth, and perhaps most powerful, harm is addiction. These platforms were designed by brilliant engineers using the same psychological principles that make slot machines profitable. Variable rewards, near misses, streaks, social proof. They exploit the dopamine system in ways that are especially potent for young brains still developing impulse control. Many teens describe feeling unable to stop, even when they hate what it's doing to them. Withdrawal symptoms appear when devices are taken away: irritability, anger, despair. For some, it reaches the level of true behavioral addiction. The fire hose of content never stops flowing, and the brain adapts by craving more. These four harms don't strike evenly. They land differently on girls and boys. For girls, social media is the sharpest weapon. Platforms amplify social comparison, appearance anxiety, and relational aggression, perfect storms during the years when peer approval feels like survival. Girls are more likely to use image-based apps like Instagram and TikTok, where every post is judged by likes, comments, and follower counts. Filters create impossible beauty standards. Cyberbullying spreads rumors and exclusion faster than ever. The result is a spike in depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and self-harm that hits girls far harder, often 2 to 3 times the rate seen in boys. The constant performance, the fear of being left out, the endless ranking of worth. It's a machine built to erode self-esteem at the exact moment the brain is most sensitive to social feedback. For boys, the damage often takes a different path. Many retreat into video games, multiplayer worlds, and, for a significant number, pornography. These offer instant mastery, status, and escape from a real world that feels confusing or hostile. Gaming can become all-consuming, pulling boys away from school, friendships, exercise, and sleep. Heavy porn use rewires sexual expectations, reduces motivation for real relationships, and can lead to isolation and shame. Boys are less likely to show outward emotional distress. They withdraw instead. They become quieter, more detached, less engaged with family and peers. The real-world social skills they need for adulthood simply don't get practiced. There's a deeper layer still. Childhood has always been a spiritual journey as much as a physical or social one. It's a time of wonder, awe, meaning-making, and connection to something larger. Whether that's nature, community, family, or a sense of the sacred. The phone-based childhood often replaces those elevating experiences with degradation. Endless scrolling replaces quiet reflection. Outrage replaces wonder. Comparison replaces gratitude. Pornography and violent content replace innocence and curiosity. Many young people feel spiritually empty, disconnected from purpose, from beauty, from each other, even from their own bodies. Anyone who participated in a Zoom-based wedding, funeral, or religious service during the COVID pandemic knows how much is lost when rituals go virtual. Humans evolved to be religious by being together and moving together. The Great Rewiring reduced synchronous physical movement, indeed all physical movement, and then COVID lockdowns reduced it further still. Social media is a fountain of bedevilments. It trains people to think in ways that are exactly contrary to the world's wisdom traditions. Think about yourself first. Be materialistic, judgmental, boastful, and petty. Seek glory as quantified by likes and followers. Many users may believe that the implicit carrots and sticks built into platforms like Instagram don't affect them, but it's hard not to be affected unconsciously. Unfortunately, most young people become heavy users of social media during the sensitive period for cultural learning, which runs from roughly age 9 to 15. To experience more self-transcendence, we need to turn down the things in our lives that activate the profane mode network and bind us tightly to our egos, such as time on social media. We need to seek out conditions and activities that have the opposite effect, as most spiritual practices do, including prayer, meditation, mindfulness, and for some people, psychedelic drugs, which are increasingly found to be effective treatments for anxiety and depression. This is the Great Rewiring in full view. A generation grew up during the most plastic, sensitive period of brain development with a device in hand that offered constant stimulation but almost none of the nourishment human beings need. The result isn't weakness or laziness. It's a predictable outcome of swapping out the experiences evolution prepared us for and replacing them with something engineered for profit, not flourishing. The stage is now set. We know the crisis is real. We know the old play-based childhood faded, and we know exactly how the new phone-based one rewired young minds, harming girls and boys in distinct but overlapping ways. What remains is the most urgent question of all. What can we do to reverse course, protect the next generation, and help those already caught in the storm? Chapter 4. Collective Action for a Healthier Childhood. After laying bare the crisis, the tidal wave of suffering, the fading of free play, the great rewiring by phones, there is still a path forward. The damage is deep, but it is not permanent. Young people are resilient. Brains remain plastic. Societies can change course when the stakes are this high. The final part of the story is about collective action, because no single parent, no single school, no single family can fix this alone. The phone-based childhood took over through shared choices and shared silence. Healing it will require shared effort and shared courage. First, we must prepare the ground. Change this big doesn't happen by accident. It requires understanding why previous attempts failed, why well-meaning rules often backfired, why shame and blame shut down conversation, why tech companies deflected responsibility for so long. The key is to shift from individual guilt to collective responsibility. Parents aren't failing if their kids are struggling. They're navigating a world that changed faster than anyone could adapt. Schools aren't failing if attention is shattered. They're trying to teach in an environment designed to fragment focus. The goal is unity, not blame, bringing everyone onto the same team to protect childhood. Governments and tech companies hold the most power to make immediate, large-scale change. Governments can act now with clear, evidence-based protections, especially for children under 16 whose brains are still developing rapidly. Age verification for social media and porn sites is one straightforward step. Without it, the current system is effectively an open door. Bans on phones during school hours have already shown strong results in multiple countries, improving focus, reducing bullying, increasing real conversation. Governments can also set safety standards for platforms the way we do for toys, cars, or food. Require default settings that protect kids, not maximize addiction. They can demand transparency. Stop letting companies hide data on how their algorithms harm young users. These aren't radical ideas. They're basic child safety measures that should have been in place from the beginning. Tech companies themselves can act immediately, even without new laws. They can raise the minimum age for accounts to 16, matching the scientific understanding of brain development. They can turn off addictive features for younger users, end infinite scroll, disable notifications at night, remove likes and follow accounts from public view. They can design for well-being instead of engagement, prioritize sleep, real-world connection, and mental health over time on site. Some companies have already begun small experiments. Scaling those changes would be transformative. The message is simple. Stop treating children as profit centers and start treating them as human beings in formation. Based on the time users spend viewing different kinds of content, AI then serves them more such content. This is why short-form video platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels are said to be so addictive. Their algorithms are able to quickly detect whatever it is that makes users pause as they scroll, which means they can pick up on unconscious wishes and interests that the user may not even be aware of, leading a minor to be served inappropriate sexual content, for example. Technology designers long ago learned that reducing friction or effort increases time spent. So features like autoplay and infinite scroll encourage increased consumption of content in an automatic, zombie-like way. When people are asked to identify the platforms on which they spend more time than they want to, the winners are social media platforms with these features. Modern video games use different tricks to keep users playing, such as free-to-play business models, validation feedback loops, loot boxes that are essentially gambling, and never-ending multiplayer games. Features like Snapchat Streaks gamify social interaction by encouraging users to send a picture to their friends every day in order to not break a publicly visible streak. Snapchat streaks pressure kids to spend more time than they themselves want to spend maintaining network connections, leaving less time for real-world interaction. Another example is setting people's privacy settings to public by default, so that whatever they post becomes content for the largest possible pool of users. Minors should be protected from products that are designed to addict them. Companies should treat children and adolescents with more care on their own, but given market incentives and business norms, it is likely to take legislation to force them to do so. Schools are on the front lines every day. They can reclaim the classroom and the playground. Phone-free policies during the entire school day, phones in lockers or pouches from arrival to dismissal, dramatically reduce distraction, cyberbullying, and social comparison. Many schools that tried this saw immediate improvements in student mood, teacher-student relationships, and academic focus. Recess and lunch can become true breaks again, unstructured time for real play, not scrolling. Schools can teach digital citizenship and media literacy, but only after protecting the environment first. A classroom without constant notifications is a classroom where real learning and real relationships can finally breathe. Parents hold the most direct influence, even if it feels overwhelming. The strongest approach is collective, not solo. When families in a school, neighborhood, or friend group agree together to delay smartphones until high school, to limit social media until 16, the pressure on any one child drops sharply. Everyone is in the same boat. No one is left out. Parents can set clear, consistent boundaries at home. No phones in bedrooms, no devices at the dinner table, no screens an hour before bed. They can bring back real-world experiences, unstructured playdates, family walks, board games, outdoor adventures. Most powerfully, parents can model the behavior they want to see. When adults put their own phones away, children notice. When families eat together without screens, talk without interruptions, laugh without filters, kids absorb the message that real life is worth showing up for. What is the right age of internet adulthood? Note that we are not talking about the age at which children can browse the web or watch videos on YouTube or TikTok. We're talking only about the age at which a minor can enter into a contract with a company to use the company's products. We're talking about the age at which a child can open an account on YouTube or TikTok and begin uploading her own videos and getting her own highly customized feed, while giving her data to the company to use and sell as it says it will do in its terms of service. One innovative and inexpensive way that European cities are helping kids and parents to be more sociable is by blocking off the street in front of a school for an hour before and after school. On these temporarily car-free school streets, parents mingle and kids play, even as congestion, pollution, and road danger go down. Cities can make this happen by easing the street closure permitting process. In our era of declining community and rising loneliness, cities and towns should make it easy for local residents to block off streets for block parties and other social reasons too, including play streets. Streets closed to traffic, part-time, so kids can play with each other, like old times. When considering transit, zoning laws, permits, and new construction, remember that kids are human beings. They want to be where the action is. Easily accessible mixed-use spaces where everyone, young and old, can hang out, see, be seen, do some playing, shopping, eating, flirting, and, when tired, bench-sitting, make everyone more engaged with the world beyond the screen. None of these steps are easy. They require courage to say no, patience when kids push back, and trust that real childhood is worth fighting for. But the evidence is already clear. Communities that act together see young people become less anxious, more engaged, more present. Sleep improves, friendships deepen, attention returns. The developmental delays start to unwind. Childhood begins to feel like childhood again. The story ends where it began, with a choice. We sent a generation to a strange new planet without safety checks, without understanding the risks, without asking enough questions. We don't have to leave them there. We can bring childhood back to Earth, back to real bodies, real faces, real risks, real play, real connection. It won't happen overnight. It will take all of us, parents, teachers, schools, governments, companies, neighbors, working together. But the tide can turn, the suffering can ease, and the next generation can grow up not anxious and rewired, but strong, curious, and truly human. That's the hope, that's the call, and that's the work still ahead. Conclusion to the book. We began with a troubling thought experiment. Imagine sending a child to live on Mars, unprotected, with no safety measures, no real understanding of the risks, and no real choice to come back. That image wasn't just a metaphor. It was a way to feel the shock of what we've actually done, handing over childhood to a new, untested environment that no one fully understood, one that quietly rewired the way an entire generation grows up, feels, connects, and dreams. What we've seen is sobering. A massive, sudden surge in anxiety, depression, loneliness, self-harm, and suicide starting in the early 2000s. A childhood that once belonged to the real world, full of free play, scraped knees, face-to-face friendships, and real risks, replaced almost overnight by a life lived inside phones and screens. 4 deep harms took root: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and powerful behavioral addiction. Girls and boys were damaged in different ways, but both were left more fragile, more isolated, less prepared to step into adulthood. Yet here is the most important truth. This story does not have to end in despair. The human brain is remarkably adaptable. Children are resilient. Societies can change direction when enough people decide the cost is too high. The damage was not inevitable. It was the result of choices. Choices we made, choices we allowed, choices we failed to question in time. That means it can be undone or at least greatly reduced by making different choices now. Bringing childhood back to Earth does not require perfect solutions or overnight miracles. It requires collective will. It requires parents talking to other parents, schools working together, communities setting shared norms. It requires governments and companies finally treating children's developing minds with the seriousness they deserve, putting safety ahead of engagement, well-being ahead of profit. The evidence is already starting to show what works. Communities that delay smartphones and social media until high school see lower anxiety and stronger friendships. Schools that go phone-free during the day report sharper focus, less bullying, and kids who actually talk to each other again. Families that protect sleep, protect dinner time, protect unstructured play, find their children returning to themselves, more present, more joyful, more capable of handling life's ordinary ups and downs. This is not about turning back time. We cannot erase the internet or pretend smartphones don't exist, but we can decide that childhood is too precious to be left entirely to algorithms and infinite scrolls. We can decide that real play, real conversation, real risk, and real rest are not luxuries. They are necessities. We can decide that the next generation deserves more than likes, streaks, and notifications. They deserve the chance to grow strong in a world that still feels human. The tide has gone out very far. The anxiety, the withdrawal, the fragility, it is real and it is widespread. But tides come back in. They always do when enough people stand together and say, enough. Enough isolation, enough sleep deprivation, enough addiction dressed up as connection, enough treating children like products instead of people. This generation has been through something historic. They didn't choose the rewiring they received. Many of them are still struggling to find their footing, but they are not broken beyond repair. They are waiting for the adults in their lives. Parents, teachers, grandparents, neighbors, lawmakers, to step up and rebuild a world that helps them thrive, not just survive. The call is simple and urgent. Bring childhood back to earth. Give kids real play in middle childhood. Give them real freedom and real responsibility as they move toward adulthood. Give them space away from the fire hose of content that fragments their minds and erodes their spirits. Give them back the experiences that evolution spent millions of years preparing them for. We know what childhood needs to flourish. We've seen what happens when it is taken away. Now we have the chance to act, not out of fear, but out of love for the children already here, and for the ones still to come. The future is not written yet. We still have time. Let's use it.